Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today I've got my full review for you of the new Kindle Scribe from Amazon. So if you've watched the unboxing and first impressions video that I put up last week, you'll know that I got this on Thursday. It's now Monday, so I've had 3 full days of use on it. I've done a lot of reading on it over the weekend, and I'm back to give you my full review and some kind of in-depth thoughts on how it is to use. And I would say I'm reviewing this very much as a reader rather than a gadget blogger. So, you know, my channel is about books. I love books, I love reading, it's my main hobby, and I do a lot of my reading on Kindle devices. So I was really interested to see how reading on the Scribe compares to reading on, say, my Paperwhite. So in terms of what I have read on it, I've read 1.5 novels on it over the weekend, and a novella and a volume of manga. So I read all of A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. I read the first half of Ghoster by Jason Arnott. I read the novella, I forgot what it's called now, The Bucket List by Mark Taus and Christo Healy, and I read volume 1 of the manga Attack on Titan. So I've read a variety of different things on it and really given it a good run through its pacings. In terms of battery life, which I will come back to later on, it's doing pretty well. So I've read, as I say, a fair amount on it, and it's used up about 30% of its battery in that time, and that's with me taking notes and just playing around with it as well. So battery life seems pretty decent. Right, so today in this review I will talk about like the build quality of the device, the software, the user experience, battery life, and I've also got a load of questions from viewers. So I've had 22 questions from people in response to my my unboxing video, so I will go through all of those things. Some of them I think I'll cover naturally in the video, but I'll recap on all of them at the end of the video as well. So if you're one of the people who's asked a question, make sure you watch to the end, because I will try and answer your question. And if you didn't ask a question but this video prompts questions from you, then please feel free to put them in the comments, and I will either answer in the comments or do a further video where I talk about and answer those questions. Okay, so first up, build quality, and I think the build quality of this thing is fantastic. This is the most premium feeling Kindle I've ever used. Definitely feels better than my Paperwhite, which I've always felt feels a little bit kind of plasticky and almost hollow. If you tap on the back of it, it feels, it sounds hollow. Whereas the Scribe feels absolutely solid. And I would say the build quality is even better than that on the Oasis. So it looks and feels a lot like the Oasis. It's got that same kind of metallic back to it, and the kind of asymmetrical design is very similar to the Oasis. But the quality feels a kind of notch above the Oasis to me. I think it's a fantastically solid feeling device. It really feels, completely bulletproof. The pen is also excellent. So the pen is really nice to use. I've gone for the 64 gig version, which has the premium pen. I believe the only difference between the premium pen and the regular pen is the premium pen has a button on the side that you can use as a shortcut for different features, and it has the kind of fake eraser on the back of the pen as well. But aside from that, I think in terms of the actual functionality, it's basically the same as the regular pen. It's just that you have to use on-screen displays to get to the eraser and the highlighter, for example, on the regular pen. So the premium pen's a bit more convenient. But yeah, it feels really, really solid. And it attaches to the side of the device as well in a very satisfying way. So it's kind of magnetic and it just clips on like that. And it's a pretty solid, decent magnet, so there's no danger of it falling off. The other thing you can do, which I've entertained myself endlessly with, is just kind of spin it around like that when you're reading. So that's become a sort of habit of mine as I'm reading, is just to spin the pen. So yeah, the pen and device both feel really beautifully solid and well made. And most importantly, the screen is absolutely gorgeous. So it's really nice to read on. It's really crisp and clear. The backlights work brilliantly and give a very even lighting across the whole screen. And the kind of warmth tones work really well as well. So it's a very, very pleasurable device to read on. In terms of ports and buttons and things like that, so I mentioned in my unboxing video that I found it slightly strange that the charging port and the power button are on the side, because traditionally they've been on either the top or the bottom of devices like this, but actually they work fine there. I've not found any problems with them there at all. The power button is really easy to find and use, so yeah, very, very convenient. And the fact you've got this large bezel on the side of the screen makes it very nice to hold in use as well. The one thing I would say though is the fact that the pen attaches on this side, I have found a little bit annoying, because if you are reading and you want to use both hands to read, the pen kind of feels like it's in the way. I mean, it's not a massive problem, but I would prefer it if the pen would magnetically attach to the top, which it doesn't do. So I think it'd be great if you could attach it in either place. So not a deal breaker by any means, but yeah, a slightly uncomfortable position to hold it in if you've got the pen there. So moving on to software then. The software is a kind of a mix of fine and a bit limited. So it's fine in terms of the fact that it is, it uses the tried and tested kind of Kindle layout, with the addition of a new tab for notebooks, and I'll talk a bit more about the notebooks experience separately. But aside from that, the layout will be very familiar. But it is limited, and again, I'll talk about this a bit more in terms of what you can do with your notes once you've written them. So the actual process for writing notes is fine, but you are a bit limited after that. The other thing to note with the software is I have had a couple of weird bugs. So one is when I was reading a Manga EPUB on it, it randomly skipped forward massively and then skipped back. So when I was tapping the side of the page, it wasn't moving just one page forward, it leapt forward, and really confused me. And I wasn't sure if the EPUB I was reading from was actually corrupt. It was one I got from Humble Bundle rather than from Amazon. So I checked it on another device and it was fine. When I then went back to the Kindle and closed the item and then opened it again, it performed absolutely fine. So it was a one-off bug, but definitely a strange one. The other one, which seems to be consistent through all the things I've tried to read on it, is that the kind of option you get at the bottom of the screen to kind of come to a zoomed out view so you can scroll quickly through the pages rather than having to tap through each one, just doesn't work. You press it and nothing happens. So not a huge problem, and I'm sure it's something that Amazon can fix in a software update, but a little bit annoying that on a device like this you're getting a bug as big as that straight out of the box. The other disappointment for me with the software is the fact that you can't get a 2-column view in landscape mode. So it is possible to rotate the screen effectively so you can read the text in landscape mode, but you just get one huge block of text rather than 2 columns. 2 columns is what you get, say, on the iPad app for Kindle, and I think that would be a fantastic addition to the device. But yeah, not available yet. So hopefully that's something that Amazon will add in a future software update. Okay, so let's talk a bit more about the note taking, because that's the big new software feature. So firstly, as I've said, there's a new tab to get into your notebooks at the bottom of the screen along with your home and library. So easy to get into, and the notebooks work really well. So it's a nice simple screen. You can choose different like layouts for the pages of your notebooks and things like that. And the writing on this thing is amazing. The feeling of writing on it really is like writing on paper. It's a completely different feeling than writing with a stylus on an iPad or something like that. It's a very, very pleasurable experience. And the responsiveness is incredible. It is like writing on paper. I really can't think of a difference. It's a fantastic experience, and I've really enjoyed just playing around and writing stuff on there. You can change the size of the pen nib and things like that, so you can have a variety of different thicknesses of pen, and there's a highlighter function as well, so that you can highlight things. So I've used it for making a few lists and notes and things like that for videos so far. So I've got a couple of notebooks that I'm using for that, and it's a fun experience. Now, in terms of limitations, so I've said it feels like writing on pen and paper. In terms of the limitations, it is kind of like writing with a pen and paper, because once you've written that note, it exists on the Scribe, but you can't do a great deal more with it. So there's no like handwriting recognition. So it you can write on the screen, but it doesn't then turn that into printed text. And the only way to get stuff off the device is to effectively email it as a PDF. So you can email it as a PDF to yourself. There's a very quick option to do that, which works very quickly, or you can choose to email it to somebody else. But once you do that, all they get is a PDF. So they can't then edit it themselves or anything like that. So it's useful to be able to get information quickly off the device. And what I found was on my iPad, if I sent the PDF to my iPad, I could then use the handwriting recognition on the iPad to copy that text and paste it into other documents. So there is a bit of a roundabout hack kind of a way to get text off the Kindle Scribe and into a Word document or something like that, but it's far from convenient. So like a pen and paper, it's really pleasurable to write on, but once you've done that, you're kind of stuck with it. So it'll be interesting to see what Amazon do with that in the future. I really hope they develop this further, because if they allowed you to, say, export the documents into Office 365 or something like that, and then use handwriting recognition in that to turn it into text, that would be fantastic. And I could really easily work that into my workflow. At the moment, as I say, I've tried making lists and notes and things like that on the Scribe, and it's very pleasurable to do it, but it doesn't really work with my workflow. So I use an app called Drafts for making notes for my videos and that kind of thing, and I've got that sync between my laptop and my phone and my iPad. So it's really convenient, because whatever device I'm using, I can get to it. So the Scribe, as things stand, is completely outside of that whole ecosystem. So a little bit frustrating in that sense, but hopefully that's something they can fix with a software update in the future. But the feature I've been using a lot, and which I absolutely love, is the ability to take notes whilst you're reading a book. So obviously you've been able to do this with previous Kindles. I can do it on my Paperwhite, but you're limited to using the on-screen keyboard, which can be a bit clunky. What I would say is the on-screen keyboard on the Scribe is better, both because it's larger, so it's easier to type on, but also because the device is just a lot more responsive than previous Kindles. But using the pen to take notes is a wonderful experience. So just highlight some text in the book, it will pop up a sticky note for you. You can scribble your notes down, and then at any point you can just click on the notes button, which is at the top of the page, and view all of the notes you've made for that book. So I found that I'm taking far more notes than I ever have before when reading books, and this is one of the reasons why I was attracted to the Scribe in the first place. Was I thought it would be a really good way to or an easier way for me to take notes on books I'm reading whilst I'm reading them, to kind of enrich my reviews a bit. And we'll see if my reviews feel enriched when I start talking about some books on the channel that I've actually read on the Scribe. But I've definitely taken a lot more notes than I've ever done before, and it's a really pleasurable experience to do it, and really quick as well, really quick and easy. So I'm incredibly impressed with that feature. So in terms of the overall experience then, it's great. I really, really love reading on this thing. As I said at the start, the build quality is fantastic. So it feels really nice in the hands, and it's also incredibly responsive. So it feels like the most premium Kindle I've ever used, both in terms of the responsiveness of the screen and just the build quality overall of the device. And whilst it is big, the design with that big bezel on one side to hold it means you can use it one-handed. And whilst it's heavy, it's not as heavy, for example, as this book from the Game of Thrones series. So the Kindle weighs about 430 grams. I weighed this, and this weighs 480 grams. And I don't think many people will worry about holding a book this size for extended periods, would they? So if you can hold a book like this, you're not going to have any problems with the Kindle. And you can always use two hands if you need to. As I said earlier, the placement of the pen when you've got that attached is a little bit odd if you're trying to use two hands to hold it, but that's a really minor grumble, to be honest with you. The screen is just lovely to read on as well. It's so big, so it's effectively like you're getting a similar amount of text to what you get in a big size hardback book, and I found that really great to read on. I'm feeling like I'm getting more immersed in the books I'm reading, because I'm just concentrating on the text for longer periods of time without having to think about turning the page. That might sound like a weird thing to say, but I've definitely felt it when I've been reading the books. And the ability to take notes really easily is wonderful as well. I absolutely love that feature of it. So yeah, it feels like a lovely, lovely device to read on. But what I would say is, I think that the size of it is both a blessing and a curse. So it's fantastic to read on when you're using it, but it's not a device I would want to use in every situation that I currently use a Kindle in. So I probably wouldn't, for example, take it on my daily commute. I wouldn't take it on the train to work. I would take my Paperwhite instead. And I wouldn't read it in the bath because it's not waterproof like the Paperwhite is. And also, I wouldn't read it in bed. It just feels a bit too big for that. So if you're sitting in an armchair and holding it, maybe resting it on your lap, perfect. Really wonderful to read on. But it does feel a bit too big for, for other types of reading use. So what I found I've been doing is alternating between that and my Paperwhite. So I read on the Kindle during the day, and then I usually read 10 or 15 minutes in bed before dropping off, and I've been using the Paperwhite for that. And obviously the WhisperSync feature, which all Kindles have, means that my page, my progress through the book is seamlessly synced wirelessly between them, so I can just pick up either device and carry on from where I got to. It did occur to me that maybe the ultimate pairing would be the Scribe and the new 2022 edition of the basic Kindle, which now has the 330 pixels per inch screen, so the same as the Scribe and the Paperwhite, and the OSS indeed, but is quite small. So that will be, it feels to me like a great device to use for, like reading in the bath or taking to work or whatever, those situations where you just want something small and simple, and then use the Scribe when you're reading at home. So I'm almost tempted to buy one of the basic Kindles as well, and then I'll have the full set of Kindles, which seems a bit ridiculous, doesn't it? So maybe I won't do that. But yeah, it's just great to read on. I really, really am enjoying it. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to questions I've had from viewers. So, as I said at the start, I've had 22 questions on my unboxing video. And if you've got a question, feel free to ask it in the comments here, and I'll try to answer it either in the comments or in a future video. But for now, I will go through these 22 questions and hopefully answer them all. Some of them I may have touched on at earlier points in the video, but I'll just recap on them all. So the first question is from James Scales. And his question is, could you review the tactile feel of the pen against the screen? I.e., does it have the resistance like writing on paper, or rather slippery like trying to write on glass? It's much more like writing on paper than writing on glass. It maybe hasn't got quite the same level of resistance as writing on paper, but it's very close, and it's a really pleasurable and, as I say, responsive experience. It really does feel like you are, literally writing on something. Second question is from Bobby Snap. I'm curious how easy it is to navigate through your notes. Do you have to find the page first, or is there a way to look at all the notes by book, etc.? So you can look at, if you go into a book, you can look at all the notes that you've taken for that book. I don't think there's a way to view the notes you've taken on a particular book outside of the book, if that makes sense. I think you actually have to go into the book to view the notes. And in terms of the notebooks, so notes you've taken outside of books, if you're just using it as a pad, those are, you can order those and group those however you want to. So you can set up as many notebooks as you want, and you can set up folders for your notebooks as well. So you could have, like a work folder and a reading folder or whatever. So you can organise those notebooks in the way that best suits you. Next question is from Scremosa. I'm very interested how you would read manga on it. Would it be comfortable compared to iPad and such? So I really enjoyed reading Attack on Titan on it. So that was an EPUB file that I got from Humble Bundle, but obviously you can buy manga direct from Amazon as well, and that big screen is fantastic for reading manga on it. It was really, really nice. Really crisp, the contrast and things like that look fantastic. Obviously I did have that bug I mentioned, but apart from that, it was a really, really great experience, and I'll definitely be reading more manga on it. It's given me that kind of spur to read more manga and comics. What I haven't tried yet, and I'm going to try at some point, is to see what a colour comic looks like on it. So obviously it's just a black and white screen, so I'll be interested to see how it handles colour images and what those look like on it. So I may cover that in a future video. Next question is from Riccardius. Please tell me if you can write over a PDF or book page directly, or if you need to open a note instead. Right, so I didn't touch on this earlier on in the video. So I did say that if you're taking notes in a book, you highlight a bit of text and it will pop up a sticky note. So you can't write directly on the page, if that makes sense. You need to get the note to pop up and then you write on that. Now that is true for books so far in terms of my testing. That's been true for books I've bought from Amazon. So like EPUBs or MOBIs that I've got from Amazon, that's how you can take notes in them. For other documents, I haven't been able to do it in the same way. So for example, books I've got from NetGalley or from Project Gutenberg or somewhere like that, so ebooks I've sourced from places other than Amazon, you cannot use the pen, as far as I can tell. So if you can highlight bits of text, you can get the note to pop up, but you have to use the keyboard. You can't use the pen. Now, why that is, I do not know. I don't know if it's because of the way they store the notes in the cloud or what, but that does seem a bit of an annoying limitation. So it'd be interesting to see if they fix that in the future. And with PDFs, you've got that same limitation. So you cannot write directly on a PDF, which definitely feels like a bit of a limitation. And, you know, that is something you can, for example, do on an iPad. So if you are interested in getting the device for, you know, making notes on PDFs and things like that, it's probably not the device for you at the moment. They may improve that in a future software update, but I certainly can't guarantee that. Next question is from Michaela Gerard. Are there different pen types and thicknesses you can use, or is it just one standard type? I'm wondering if it has any kind of drawing capabilities. So as I said, you can change the thickness of the pen. I think there's 3 or 4 different thicknesses. But that's it. You know, that's the limitation of it. You can't change like the grayscale of the pen or anything like that. So it is quite limited from a drawing perspective. I certainly wouldn't buy it as a device to draw on. It's more than sufficient for making notes and books and things like that, but not for really doing artwork on. Although you could have fun, you know, scribbling and doodling in one of your notebooks. Next question then is from Michael K Vaughn. I'm wondering about the battery life. So I think the battery life is good. I've been impressed with it so far. So as I've said, I had it charged up to I think 96%. It's now at just under 70%, and I've read 1.5 novels, a novella, and a volume of manga on it. So I've done a decent amount of reading on it, and it's not used even a third of the battery yet. So it feels to me similar-ish to the battery life on like my Paperwhite or something like that. Maybe not quite as good. And I do suspect that making notes uses more battery life, because when you're making a note, the screen is having to refresh constantly, whereas normally the screen only refreshes when you turn a page, and that's what uses battery life on a Kindle, is that, you know, is the screen refreshing. So I suspect that me taking lots of notes in books and using the notebooks means that the battery life is depleted a bit faster than it would have done if I was purely reading. Next question from Caroline C. Is it expandable with a USB drive? No, I'm afraid not. So you cannot plug anything into it. That port on the side is purely just for charging, which is a bit of a shame, but it's very easy to send documents to your like Kindle Cloud Drive effectively, and then choose whether you download them to the device or not. As I said, I went with the 64GB version because I like to be able to have everything on the device, but you could go for the 16GB version and just only download, you know, some of the stuff you've got rather than everything. And indeed, for many people, a 16GB will actually be big enough to encompass their whole library anyway. So the next question is from Francis Sukraj, and Francis asks, how much does it cost and how many books can it store? So that's kind of a difficult question to answer because there's a range for both of those things. So price-wise, in the UK, and I think the dollar price is roughly the same numerically, it ranges from £329 for the 16GB version with the basic pen to £409 for the 64GB version with the premium pen, which is what I've got. In terms of storage, so a 16GB Kindle, I think, you know, will definitely store like 1,000 books or something like that. So it's, you know, even the smallest one will hold a lot of books. If you're wanting to put manga and things like that on it, or comics, that will obviously take up more storage because Kindle books are, you know, relatively small in terms of the amount of room they take up. So, you know, there is a range there, but if you check the Amazon site, you can see all of the details of that. Next question is from Shanawaz Nizam. Please share manga reading experience. So I've talked about that a bit already, but yeah, I found the experience of reading manga on it to be fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it, and the images on the screen look fantastic. Next question is from Alexis Rudell. Does the Kindle Scribe supports EPUB, but is it necessary to convert it, or can I upload my EPUB books directly on the Kindle? So I've tried both side loading, so literally plugging the Kindle into my laptop and transferring books that way, or emailing them. So if you don't know, with Kindle you get like a dedicated email address for that Kindle, and you can email books to it. So I've tried both of those with EPUBs, and both have worked absolutely fine. My preference is doing the email way, because then it's in your kind of Kindle cloud, and you can then easily download it to any other Kindles you've got with the Kindle app on your phone or anything like that. Whereas if you sideload it to the Kindle with a cable, it'll only be on the device you put it onto. Next question is from David Naylor. Does the screen show colour? So no. So the screen is purely black and white. I suspect that Amazon will release a colour Kindle at some point in the future. So an e-ink colour Kindle, I mean, rather than something like the Kindle Fire, which has an LCD screen. My bet is that either the next Kindle Oasis or the one after that will have a colour e-ink screen. So there are colour e-ink screens on the market now. I think they're a lot more expensive. And I think Amazon will be waiting for the price to come down. I personally I'm not sure I see the benefits of a colour screen until they come down a lot in price. So for me, because I'm mostly just reading text on it, black and white is absolutely fine. So yeah, not colour for now. Next question is from Zeke C. Why is the Kindle so expensive? Surely Amazon can drop the price to a level that can be appealing to the consumers and make the competitors nervous. So yeah, they are expensive, and this one is definitely expensive. But I think, the basic Kindle, which I think is £80 or £90 now, I think is a bit of a bargain, to be honest with you. And remember as well that Amazon do drop their prices, regularly. So they have regular sales, like the Black Friday sales that have just passed, and they have, I think, 2 Prime Day sales a year as well, where the price will be dropped significantly. And Kindles quite often, well, they always end up in those kind of, those big sales that Amazon have, but they do quite often do other price drops on Kindles as well. So do look out for those. So yeah, it's not, they're not cheap, but I think they are good value for money, especially if you get one in a deal. And why don't Amazon make them even cheaper? Probably because they don't need to. I think they're selling these things by the bucket load without dropping the price. So why would they make them cheaper? Okay, next question is from Read by Fred. I've kind of answered this one already, but not all of it. So the first part of the question is, does it feel like writing on paper? So basically, yes, pretty much. And do you think you could write in blocks of 5 or 10 minutes on it without issue? Yeah, I think you could. I've not tried writing for that length of time on it, but I've written, like a full page of notes in one go. And that was, fine. That was a very nice experience. So yeah, I think you could write for extended periods on it. Next question is from MJ at Reading This Life. Does the highlight feature work in the same way with the option to publish on Amazon and Goodreads? So yes. So if you just highlight a bit of text, yes, you can publish that on Amazon and Goodreads. I don't think you can publish handwritten notes though. I think those only stay with, effectively with the device, or you can, as I say, share them via PDF, as I've said. So hopefully they will improve the sharing options in the future, but for now that's all you can do. And the second question from MJ is, are there any differences or privacy concerns with the Scribe model? I don't think so. I don't think there's anything different in terms of what they're doing with your data and your notes and things like that than they're doing with the other Kindles. So if you're comfortable with the way your data is handled on those, you should be fine with the Scribe. Next question is from Holly C. I'm curious as to how you found the power button and charging port placement as you use it. There have been times on the Oasis that I've accidentally shut it down while holding it. So yeah, as I said, I found the placement is better. So on the side, I found it looked a bit odd to me at first, but I've had no problems with it at all. Whereas like you, Holly, I have had problems with I think both the Paperwhite and the Scribe and the Oasis, where I've accidentally turned it off because I've been resting it on my lap or something like that. Next question is from Ada2994. I would love to know realistic battery life on this thing. So as I've said, I depleted it in a weekend of pretty heavy reading by about 30%. So I think, based on how much I normally read, I read more at the weekend than I do during the week. I think I would easily get 2 weeks out of this, if not more. Maybe 2 weeks to a month, depending on how much I was reading and how many notes I was taking. So the stated battery life is just months, which I think if you are a light reader, you could definitely get months out of this. If you're a heavy reader, I think you're probably 2, 3, 4 weeks, that sort of period of time. Next question is from Nicole Rodriguez. Does the new Kindle have an audio output or text-to-speech? So it doesn't have an audio output in terms of a headphone jack or anything like that, but it does have Bluetooth, so you can share audio on it to Bluetooth devices, Bluetooth headphones or speakers, and you can get Audible books on it as well, so you can definitely listen to audiobooks using it. In terms of text-to-speech, I think in the US it may have text-to-speech. In the UK, so the UK Kindle books do not support text-to-speech, but I think that's a regional thing, and I think in some other countries you can get text-to-speech on all Kindles, not just this one. I may be wrong on that, so if you know the answer on that one, please do let me know in the comments. Next question is from Marianne. I do all my reading via Kindle, and I do get frustrated with non-fiction books where I can't properly see the graphs and tables. Could you show us how the Scribe manages non-text? So yes. So funnily enough, the book I'm reading at the moment, Ghoster by Jason Arnott, has sections in it which are text messages between people, and they're shown with a kind of speech bubbles like you get in text message apps on your phone now. So I've had a lot of experience in the last day or so of reading in pictures, if you like, on the Scribe, and it's really good. It's much better than reading on my Paperwhite, where I've struggled in the past. And obviously I don't read a lot of non-fiction, but in fiction books that have pictures and images and things like that, or the 87th Precinct books that I love quite often have like printed copies of police reports and things like that in them, and I have to really squint at those to read them. Whereas on the Scribe, because that screen is so much bigger, you can read them really easily. So I think it will be great for reading non-fiction on. Okay, the next question is from Tommy Girl, who says, I love my Kindle Paperwhite, but at times I feel it's a bit heavy. How comfortable is the Scribe to hold and read on? Would you use it on public transportation or in the tub? So, as I said earlier, I think it's a great device for reading on at home when you're somewhere comfortable, sitting in your armchair or something like that. I probably wouldn't use it on public transport, and I certainly wouldn't use it in the bath because it's not waterproof. So yeah, it's a great device to read on, but the size does make it a little bit impractical. And like I said, it is heavier as well. It's the heaviest Kindle, but there are certainly loads of books out there that are heavier. So I don't think it's problematically heavy. It's just the literal size of it I think would make it a bit awkward in some situations. Next question is from Heloisa Duarte, who says, I write with my left hand but hold things with my right hand. Does the screen flip? So yes, it does. So you can hold it with that big bezel with either your right hand or your left hand, and the screen will orientate itself correctly. So whichever your preference is in terms of holding the device and holding the pen, it will accommodate that for you. Okay, next question is from Gregory Roback, who says, I'm very curious to see how the reading experience is. So as I've said, it's great to read on. The size maybe is a little bit impractical, but in the right sort of scenarios, it's an absolute joy to read on. The final question is from Daryl Sloan, who says, I'd be very interested to see how it copes with A4 size PDF comics. So as I said, I've read Attack on Titan, which was an EPUB, which it, for the most part, handled well, apart from that weird bug I had where it skipped forward. I've also tried reading a magazine on it in PDF format, and it handled that fine. It was really clear and really easy to use, and I didn't have any kind of skipping issues or anything like that. So it feels pretty solid to me for reading PDFs on, with that limitation that you can't take notes on the PDF itself. So those are my thoughts on the Kindle Scribe. I'm really, really enjoying using it so far. It's a beautifully made device. The screen is lovely. The pen works very well. So as a device purely for reading on, I think it's brilliant, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. In terms of the kind of handwriting and note-taking side of it, that for me seems great within books, and it works very well on the device itself. But I do think Amazon need to do more with the sharing options in order to make it a more compelling reason divider device. So if they could integrate it with Office 365 or something like that, or Evernote, or there are loads of note-taking apps out there. If they could integrate it with one of those, I think it would be brilliant. So you could easily access and edit your notes on other devices. At the moment, that does feel like a big limitation. And as I said, I've also had a couple of bugs with it as well. So hopefully that's something Amazon can fix in software updates in the future. But yeah, as a physical device, it's fantastic. The software, I think, still needs a little bit more work. So I hope you found that interesting and useful. As I said, if you've got any questions, do put them in the comments and I will try to address them either in the comments or on a future video. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.